Most men misunderstand women over 40 because they assume their biggest fear is aging. It's not. Age itself isn't the fear. What scares them is something much deeper and much quieter. The real fear is this: what if I am no longer emotionally chosen? Not desired physically, not admired publicly, but emotionally chosen, without effort, without proving, without chasing. Here's the part most men don't see. By 40, many women have already done everything they were told would make them happy. They've built careers, they've invested in relationships, they've compromised, supported, sacrificed. And somewhere along the way, they noticed something unsettling. The attention changed, not disappeared, but changed in quality. Less curiosity, less patience, less emotional pursuit. That shift creates a silent fear, not of being alone, but of being emotionally overlooked. And here's where men misunderstand it completely. When a woman over 40 becomes guarded, distant, or selective, men often assume she's bitter, she's difficult, she has too many standards. That's wrong. What you're seeing is emotional risk management. She's no longer afraid of being alone, she's afraid of investing again and being emotionally unseen. At this stage, attraction isn't about excitement, it's about emotional safety. That's why women over 40 test differently, not with drama, not with jealousy, but with silence, observation, and emotional restraint. They're watching one thing closely. Does this man see me, or just the version of me he wants? And this is where many men fail without realizing it. They try to impress. They try to lead with charm, humor, confidence, but they don't slow down enough to recognize emotional nuance. A woman over 40 doesn't fear rejection the way younger women might. She fears being chosen temporarily. She fears being valued only when convenient, desired but not prioritized, listened to but not understood. And when she senses that risk, she pulls back before attachment forms. Not because she isn't interested, but because she understands the emotional cost of being wrong. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men never hear. A woman over 40 isn't asking, "Will he like me?" She's asking, "Will he stay consistent when the novelty fades?" That question shapes everything: her pace, her boundaries, her silence. And if a man mistakes that caution for disinterest, he loses her before he ever understands her. Here's where it gets more interesting and more misunderstood. When a woman over 40 feels attracted to a man, her fear doesn't make her chase, it makes her observe. She watches how he reacts when she doesn't respond immediately, when she disagrees calmly, when she sets a boundary without explanation. Not to test power, but to test emotional maturity. Because at this stage, attraction isn't about excitement spikes, it's about emotional predictability. That's why women over 40 are extremely sensitive to inconsistency. One day warm, next day distant, big words, small actions, charm without follow-through. Those aren't red flags anymore, they're deal breakers. And here's a hard truth most men aren't ready for. Women over 40 don't fear losing men, they fear losing themselves trying to keep one. That fear comes from experience, not insecurity. So when a man pushes too fast, oversells the future, or rushes intimacy, her nervous system doesn't feel excitement, it feels danger. She doesn't think, "This is romantic," she thinks, "This is familiar," and not in a good way. That's why some men feel confused when a woman over 40 suddenly pulls back right when things seem good. What actually happened is this: her intuition noticed a pattern before her emotions got involved. Now here's the part that separates men who understand women from men who constantly lose them. A woman over 40 feels safest and most attracted when a man moves steadily, not urgently, listens without fixing, responds instead of reacts, shows interest without possession. This kind of man doesn't trigger her fear, he dissolves it, because he doesn't make her feel like she has to perform, prove, compete, or rush attachment. And here's something very few men realize. When a woman over 40 relaxes emotionally around you, that's not comfort, that's deep attraction. Silence becomes easy, conversation slows down, there's no emotional pressure. That's the moment she feels, I don't have to protect myself here. And once that feeling appears, she bonds deeply. This is why older women don't fall fast, but when they fall intentionally. Now here's a subtle mistake many men make. They interpret emotional independence as lack of desire. They think, she doesn't need me. But the truth is, she's choosing, not needing. And being chosen by a woman who doesn't need validation is far more powerful than being wanted by someone who does. Here's the shift most men never see. When a woman over 40 feels emotionally safe with you, she doesn't become louder, she becomes more subtle. Her attraction shows up as consistency, presence, calm interest, emotional availability without pressure. And this is where many men misread the situation. They expect excitement the way younger dynamics work: constant texting, fast escalation, emotional highs. But mature attraction doesn't spike, it settles. And that settling is intentional, because deep down, her hidden fear isn't rejection, it's repetition. Repeating patterns where she gave more than she received, where she ignored intuition, where she stayed too long, where she lost emotional balance. So when she meets a man who doesn't rush, doesn't push, and doesn't perform masculinity, her nervous system relaxes. That relaxation is powerful. Here's the paradox. The calmer you are, the more she opens. The less you chase, the more she chooses. The more grounded you feel, the safer she feels. Now, let's talk about why emotional steadiness matters more than looks, money, or charm at this stage. A woman over 40 has already been impressed. She's already been promised. She's already been desired. What she hasn't always felt is held emotionally. That's why she pays close attention to how you respond under stress, how you handle disagreement, whether you respect her pace, whether you stay consistent without reassurance. If you disappear emotionally when challenged, her fear activates. If you become defensive, her walls rise. If you try to dominate or control, she withdraws quietly. She won't argue, she won't explain, she'll simply detach. And most men never realize why. Now, here's something important. When a woman over 40 starts asking you questions about your values, routines, or past decisions, that's not curiosity, that's evaluation. She's asking herself, is this man emotionally safe long-term? This is also why humor, calm confidence, and grounded silence are so attractive to her. Not loud confidence, not forced dominance, but a man who is comfortable being still, because stillness signals control, not over her, but over himself. And that dissolves her deepest fear, being emotionally pulled into chaos again. One more truth most men never hear. A woman over 40 doesn't want to be won, she wants to be met. Met emotionally, met intellectually, met energetically. And when she feels met, not chased, her attraction becomes deep, loyal, and intentional. This is where the bond forms, not in passion, not in drama, but in emotional safety paired with quiet strength. Here's the final truth most men discover too late. A woman over 40 doesn't fall in love the way she did before. She decides, and that decision isn't emotional impulse, it's emotional clarity. By this stage, she knows exactly what drains her and what stabilizes her. She's not chasing butterflies, she's choosing peace. That's why the men she commits to often look ordinary on the surface, but feel extraordinary in presence. They don't pressure her, test her loyalty, demand constant validation, create emotional highs and lows. Instead, they offer something rare: predictability without boredom, confidence without ego, strength without control. And this is the part that scares many men, because attraction here isn't loud, it doesn't announce itself, it grows quietly and locks in deeply. When she feels understood without explaining, when she feels respected without negotiating, when she feels safe without giving up desire, That's when her fear dissolves. Not the fear of being alone, but the fear of choosing wrong again. If you've noticed a woman over 40 staying consistent with you, opening up slowly, remembering small details, inviting you into her routine, that's not friendship, that's intentional attraction. And if you rush it, test it, or try to dominate it, you lose it. But if you stay grounded, present, and emotionally steady, you become rare, and rarity is what creates commitment. One last thing, quietly important. If you're finding clarity in content like this, it means you're already operating at a different level of awareness. That awareness is what separates men who chase attraction from men who naturally attract commitment. Stay calm, stay consistent, stay centered, and let attraction come to you the way it was always meant to.